Let's go live now for some analysis on what we can expect from Donald Trump. George Washington University Assistant Professor of Economics Stephen Hamilton joins us live from Washington. What do you see as the big question here, Stephen? Thanks as always for your time in this second Trump administration.
Yeah, I think we want to know if he's going to do these tariffs. I think, there was a lot of talk about tariffs. There wasn't a lot of specificity, right, prior to the election. So we know he promised an across-the-board 10 to 20% tariff increase and something like 60% on Chinese goods. And if that happens, that will be, quite bad for the US economy. That will be bad for the global economy. That will be quite bad for Australia. So if he does that to the letter, it's bad. But I think right now we're wondering, is this sort of thing a negotiating tactic? Like, is he using this to kind of force other countries to provide the US more favorable trade terms, for example, and he won't actually end up using it? So, I think there's just a tremendous amount of uncertainty on really every, aspect of the Trump presidency. So we really do just have to wait and see after January what exactly he's going to do.
We've seen the markets rally, which is an interesting immediate reaction. The longer term question is, as you say, about trade. I'm hearing from Australian officials that Robert Lighthizer, they're expecting him to return as one of the trade representatives. For our viewers who might not know him, he is notoriously a protectionist trade representative, Stephen, Robert Lighthizer.
Yeah, look, since the mid-2000s, for an economist, this is really tough. Since the mid-2000s, we've really retreated from trade pretty aggressively since Trump was first, became president. You remember prior to that, under Obama and then potentially under Clinton, there was a lot of talk of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, right? So there was actually a move in the world to go towards more openness, to further reduce, barriers to trade. And that sort of sliding doors moment for the world in 2016, where we went with Trump, took the world in a very different direction. Biden maintained a lot of the tariffs that Trump put in place, not all of them, but many. And Trump is saying he'd do further, right? And so I just really genuinely worry that this sort of anti-trade stance leads to some kind of cascading, retaliatory actions across the world, where we really take a step back from something that has generated tremendous improvement in living standards across the world, right? We shouldn't pretend that this hasn't been incredibly positive for workers right up and down the income distribution, right? So again, we need to see details, but I really do, I am quite concerned.
What's your assessment on the drill baby drill promise from Trump? Does that sound good from an economy perspective or for manufacturers in the United States?
Look, the US has become a larger producer of fossil fuels than, Saudi Arabia, for example, right? So there has been an extraordinary expansion in energy production in the US through fracking, mostly over the past sort of decade. And that's been tremendously positive for the US, right? So there's no doubt about that. But of course, we have these climate accords that the US and other countries have agreed to. Obviously, Trump is committed to scrapping the kind of, many of the measures of Biden. So drill, baby, drill, great in the short run. But over the next 30 years, we've really got to be moving to a trajectory towards net zero. And I have to be honest, again, I'm reasonably concerned about the prospects for the US. If we have 4 years of Trump, it's further delay on making progress on that pretty important challenge.
Finally, as someone who lives in the United States, what do you make of this emphatic win, a clean sweep essentially, and big swings to the Republican candidate, even in safe Democratic states?
Yes, it is overwhelming. I think he took all of the swing states, all of them, 100% of them. And his strongest performance among two racial groups was among Hispanics and among Native Americans. The next, group that he was most resoundingly positive amongst were inner urban and suburban areas, right? So, and the entire country moved to the right. So, you cannot ignore the very fundamental appeal of Trump at this time. People have really good memories of the 2016 to 2020 period. That the economy did really well in that period. And the last 4 years has been very tough for a lot of people. And while things have improved in the past few months, I think people's memories are still back in the sort of dark days of 2021 and 2022. And so, the whole country basically decided we want to go back to 2016, right? And that can't be ignored. And I think the Democrats under Harris just didn't counter that basic issue, right? How were they going to improve the state of the economy compared to what we've seen over the past 4 years?
Stephen Hamilton, great to get your insights as always. Talk to you soon.
Cheers, Kieran.